Welcome, and thank you for joining us for Socially and Ecologically Engaged Data Visualization, a Media Arts demonstration. We invite you to engage with this presentation in a way that is meaningful for you. For example, you may choose a different collection of data, use different materials to create your data visualization, work at your own pace, or simply observe today and create another time. We also want to thank everyone who contributed to making this conference available. If you are using the alt text for images and you would like more detail about an image, please contact Dr. Amanda Galbraith at agalbra6@utk.edu. I'm Joy Bertling, and I serve as the Director and Principal Investigator of the Data Visualization Project at the University of Tennessee. I am also an Assistant Professor of Art Education at the University of Tennessee. As part of my role in this project, I'm especially interested in how arts-based data visualization can be socially and ecologically engaged, which is an important component of the project. The rest of the team will introduce themselves now.
I'm Amanda Galbraith, and I serve as the postdoctoral research associate for the Data Visualization Project at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. During my 18 years as a visual art teacher in K through 5 schools, the student artists with whom I worked created visual stories based on their experiences, investigations, and possibilities. Data visualization is valuable for students because it challenges them to make connections between different content areas, civic engagement, and their art making.
Hi all, my name is Rita Swartzentruber and I serve as a graduate research assistant on this project. One of the things that I love most about data visualizations is that it gives students the chance to put their own voice into creating something, especially in mathematics.
Hi, my name is Tabitha Wandell. I'm a graduate research assistant on the Data Visualization Project. I have really enjoyed working on this project and appreciate artistic data visualization because it has allowed me to see student choice, a connection between math, science, and art, as well as promoting relevance in classroom student learning.
Bill and Marsh created these digital images to visualize a comparison between the amount of minerals mined from the land in Africa, in South Africa, with the devastation of the land that came about as part of that mining process. Marsh described this work as, quote, images that combine photography and computer-generated elements in an effort to visualize the output of various mines in South Africa. The CGI objects represent scale models of the materials removed from the ground. By doing so, the intention is to create a kind of visualization of the merits and shortfalls of this industry that has shaped the history and economy of the country so radically, end quote. By viewing these digital images, viewers could be inspired to ask questions and begin to grasp the impact that mining has had on this particular region in a way that seeing the same information presented, for instance, in a traditional format like a bar graph could not. The first image on the left is the T. Fontaine mine in Concordia, South Africa. The mine is over 100 meters deep. The image shows 38,747 tons of copper extracted in the 17-year period from 1887 to 1904. This mine is still in operation for the mining of chromium and coal, as reflected in the data table on the right. These artists, Pekka Nitivirta and Timo Aho, explored how projected sea level rise data would impact actual locations on the Earth. This installation, called Coastline Paradox, is a continuation of a series called Lines that they created, that the artists created in Scotland. This installation is interactive and uses a custom-built map interface and Google Street View. So it represents a collaboration with Google. The glowing line represents the projected rise in sea level over a span of 300 years and visualizes the projected impact on several selected locations. While it is also possible to see this impact presented in the form of a bar graph or table, we think the visuals of the sea level projected in actual locations has the potential to help the public really realize and feel the impact of these changes. Now we'll turn to a few student data visualizations. This middle school student chose to work with data related to carbon emissions in the state of Tennessee. I'll read the artist statement that the student created about the work. The big idea of my image is to show the audience how much Tennessee relies on fossil fuels in each sector. The data connects because of how I've presented the image and data. In the image, Tennessee has been cut into different pieces. Each piece is a different size. The sizes are meant to represent the total amount produced. The sector with the most emissions produced is the biggest piece, and the smallest piece is the least amount of emissions produced. The letters in the different pieces are meant to be the first letter of each sector name. This way, the audience should be able to tell which sector is which piece. The three colors represent each different way these emissions are created. Yellow represents natural gas, green represents coal, and blue represents petroleum products. If a color is missing from the section, then that means that sector has zero emissions from it. The more a color is present, the more it is used to create emissions in that sector, end quote. This student created an image about cat adoptions. This is a description of the work from the student's artist statement. Quote, "The idea of the image was to show the increasing number of adoptions in the USA. I chose this topic because I have a cat myself, and I think it's important that any animal has a family. I used size differences and colors to show data. The bigger numbers were highlighted in bigger parts of the cat tree. Smaller numbers were highlighted in smaller parts of the cat tree. At first, I didn't know how to show my data, but in the end, I like how it turned out." End quote.
Now that we have seen some approaches taken by artists and the student artists with whom we worked, we would like to share the process we used with the students to create their data visualizations. We will start with data, then discuss ways to connect with story, and then discuss strategies for manipulating images to create a data visualization digital collage. You may wish to have access to your phone for this session, as we will use QR codes to link to some resources. One way to inspire a data visualization is to start with statistics or data relevant to the community in which you work. For our work with students, we selected social and ecological data of interest to them with a focus on local sources. Initial topics included air quality, animal adoptions, concussions and other sports injuries, water quality, and education costs. We also located additional data on topics requested by students, and some students sought their own data. One thing we would like to mention when working with datasets for students is that it is often necessary to refine and organize datasets to make them more accessible and able to be translated into data visualizations. For example, we often had to combine data from multiple sources, reorganize or reformat for clarity, and add labels when preparing data sets we used in the project. We also hosted guest speakers from community organizations who talked about what data they use and how that data can address community needs. This helped the students hear unique perspectives about how data can reflect community needs and shape decisions. In planning this presentation, we recognized that creating a data set relevant to the community would expand our definition of community to include people from various geographic regions who would likely have a connection to education. Therefore, we researched and organized this data set for this presentation. This is data about national average teacher salaries and median home prices presented in 10-year increments from 1980 to 2020. As you look at this data set, think about what questions you have about what is presented here, how what you see relates to your experience, and what else you might want to know about these two topics. We recognize that using an average of all salaries and median prices does not account for important regional considerations. We would also like to note that this does not include data for all types of housing or housing situations. You will have access to this data set, but you may prefer to find data that is more specific or relevant to your context. Once you have identified interesting data sources, it is helpful to begin with an approach to translate that into a visualization. One approach is to find a story to tell. These types of stories, outlined by the Data Culture Project, provide an interesting approach to interpreting data. The type of story you select can inform the strategies you will use to create your art, the images you will select to represent the data, and how the data connects with viewers. When we worked with the students, we saw that several of them initially connected to data based on personal connection and later added in elements of comparison or change over time as they worked on their projects. As you think about the data we just viewed and the questions you have about it, do any of these types of stories align with your observations? Often the same data set will provide opportunities for several stories, and it is up to the artist to select the one that is the most compelling. Another component to creating a data visualization is connecting the data and story to visual presentation. There are many strategies artists can use to manipulate images to tell stories in digital and non-digital spaces. Using these strategies in digital spaces allows for experimentation and creates opportunities to craft multiple images and stories. While some of these strategies can be used in isolation, combining them results in new ways to visualize data and convey stories. For today's demonstration, we will reference the online program Photopea, which was the platform we used with the students with whom we worked. However, we encourage you to use the platform with which you are the most comfortable for manipulating images. We created a Photopea guide that explains some of the image manipulation opportunities available, and it is here at the QR code. As we walk through the demonstration today, please feel free to follow along and create a visualization at your own pace. If you choose not to create one today, we hope you will consider creating one at a later time. The data set we referenced earlier is available at this link and QR code if you would like to reference it during the session or use it at another time. When working with students, one important practice to teach is how to ask questions about the data and identify patterns and trends in the data set. There are many patterns and trends that we can observe from this data set. One trend we can observe is the change in teacher salaries over the past 40 years. While it looks like there has been steady growth, when converted to 2020 dollar value, we can see that the average salary has only changed by about $12,000. We can also see that the median home price has grown from $47,000 to over $300,000 in the same time period. When converted to 2020 dollar value, that means the median home price in 2020 was more than double than it was 40 years ago. This made us wonder about the relationship between median home prices and average salaries. We divided the median home price by the average teacher salary to obtain a price-to-income ratio. Looking at this ratio tells us that over time, an educator will have to use more of their income to purchase a house. Now that we have looked at what we can learn from the data, thinking about what kind of story we want to tell can help us identify what images we want to select to visually represent our stories. When we worked with the students, we incorporated a few strategies to help them generate ideas for images to include. One strategy was a divergent thinking exercise, where students worked as a group to name as many items that connected to a given topic as they could within a given time span. Another was to challenge students to analyze an existing data-inspired art example and give suggestions of how making changes to the image would create a stronger communication of the data. As the students began planning their visualizations, we observed they selected a range of literal and abstract images to represent the stories they wished to tell. We also talked with students about how the meaning of images may change over time and how that can be a factor in finding and telling stories using images. As students selected their images, we also focused on some strategies for image manipulation. Photopea offers a broad range of options for manipulating images, so many in fact that it can feel overwhelming. Therefore, we focused our instruction on selected features and also encouraged the student artists to experiment with additional selections to tell their stories. This student artist selected an image of a path near a park to show data about how the local animal resource center has worked with animals over time, and selected images of different dog breeds to represent the categories in the data. One image selection that shows a connection with the data is the image of the dog with a stick in its mouth that represents animals that were returned to their owners. One resource this particular animal center has is a program to help families who don't want to surrender their animals, but who need support to care for them. The image of a dog holding a stick not only brings up ideas about the game of fetch or returning an item, as well as caring for an animal by engaging in play activities, but also represents the proportion of dogs who were able to be returned to their owners through this program. This student artist used image manipulation strategies, including layers, the magnetic lasso tool, clipping masks, background removal, size transformation, and text to construct this arts-based data visualization collage. We hope you will find the time to talk with your colleagues about how data visualization can have a role in the art students are making and the ways it can connect students with social and ecological issues. If you have work that you would like to share with the arts-based data visualization community, please share it by opening the link using this QR code. We have included a thinking organizer in the resources section that we hope will be useful in identifying connections between data visualization practices and student learning. Thank you for sharing your time with us for this presentation. Please open the link at the QR code above or type in the address below if you would like to join the arts-based data visualization community and access additional resources.